my name is Alicia Paz. I've been teaching DBT online for over 7 years. I'm always learning and growing, and as a DBT student of mine, I'm always making changes and updates to things. I was requested to make a how-to guide about diary cards, although I've made other videos about how to complete diary cards and kind of what is a diary card. I really haven't done an in-depth sort of step-by-step of diary cards. So I apologize in this advance. This video might be very long. You'll hear me say this again, but there's a lot of different types of diary cards. I'll show a few of them and explain how to fill them out. I'll also show some sample diary cards, and there is also a few apps for DBT, dialectic behavioral therapy, that also have diary cards attached to them. So if you are in one of my DBT groups, feel free to comment with what apps you utilize, or if there is a card that isn't covered here that really works for you. I also have found a fillable PDF online, so if you'd like to add your own skills or just kind of rearrange things, as I always say, the DBT skills that work the best are the DBT skills you use. So if it's easier for you to reorganize or sort certain things or have fill-in places, or even have like an example as you go, that is the diary card that is best suited for you. I will show kind of more classic DBT diary cards as we move through how to fill out a diary card. The site that I'm on is dbtselfhelp.com. I do also co-own that site, just kind of putting out there as a heads up, it's all free DBT information. There's over 500 pages of free DBT content. I point this website out beyond that because the content was created by a DBT student many years ago, well-versed in DBT, so it comes from a peer. And there is an explanation here, as you can see, kind of going through how to fill out. This is a classic diary card. So if you're looking for something to sort of follow along in some way with, this is probably a good place to start. The original diary cards do mention self-harm as well as urges and behaviors. Some of them also talk about if you're having any thoughts of suicide or just to harm yourself. So I just want to sort of start by saying you will see some of those words that might be triggering or uncomfortable to you as we move through. I've noticed that newer diary cards do not use or less likely to use a lot of that terminology or lingo. So as you pick out a diary card that works for you, you might want to kind of look for certain things that you do want to see, certain things you don't want to see, and also things that maybe that isn't something that you're needing to work on right now, and having it on a card isn't necessary for your recovery and for you moving through DBT. So as we go through diary cards, I will give a brief summary, and I'll timestamp this as well because it's going to get long, on what a diary card is to begin with, and then we'll dive into a step-by-step guide of filling in a diary card as well as looking at a sample diary card. So the purpose of a diary card is to kind of have a journal, have a way for you to track the skills you're utilizing. Checking a box saying that you filled out a DBT skill also doesn't mean that the issue you were dealing with and then used the skill, that issue is gone, everything is fixed because you used a skill. It's just about kind of trying a skill. DBT diary cards are covered in the beginning following the mindfulness of live DBT groups, whether you do that online with me or you're going through a DBT clinic to get that kind of service. So it also in some ways is a little bit like homework, although you don't have to hand it in typically. It is something that sometimes in DBT clinics is also reviewed in one-on-one sessions. The purpose of the card is just to look through what skills you've utilized over the course of a week or until your next session. It's often a check boxes or scaling things either 1 to 5. I've seen 1 to 7 before, and sometimes 1 through 10, just kind of keeping track of the skills you use throughout the week until the next time that you have either DBT group or session with a one-on-one DBT trained therapist. So I will go sort of through this. So it is kind of an accountability thing to some extent. I do find that sometimes people like to physically fill them out, print them out, and then keep them like on themselves, like on your person, in your wallet. I've worked with people who carried it in their car with them. I've worked with people who set an alarm and made sure to do it every night. And then there are people who I'm glad that they're filling out the diary card and they're filling it out in the lobby before the next session. We know it happens. I'm glad that people are filling out the diary card. It is ideal for you to fill it out every single day, but I also understand that, things happen. So if you work best on an app and you're on your phone constantly or just more of a tech person, that's great. If you want to develop your own or print or write them out, I've worked with people who had pretty markers and pens and highlighters because it made the diary cards more desirable or more enjoyable to fill out. I've actually seen, and there's someone that I follow on Instagram that I will mention as well, who has a public Instagram that kind of doodles on the cards and explains things in this really lovely doodle form. So as I always say, whatever works for you works for me. So if that is the way that you learn best and you're more likely to fill out the diary card, go forth. So we will go through some paper copies of diary cards. If you have a printer and you can print them out multiple at a time, that would be great. I've also seen some really great Excel copies. So if you want to just save it to your computer, kind of in this day and age, and everyone has a printer in their home, go forth and do that as well. So I will dive into kind of the step-by-step of filling out a diary card. So I'm going to click on the first one, the sample. This is listed as a traditional DBT diary card. I would 100% agree. If you have done DBT in person, this is likely the card you've utilized. If you learned DBT years ago, this is also the diary card that you are used to seeing. I jokingly call this the OG diary card because it is the original Marsha Linehan diary card. This one has a copyright of 1999 on it. We are in the year 2020 for reference on diary card. So as you can see, this is sort of set up for clinics. Obviously, filling out ID is not necessary for what you're doing. And it goes through SH is self-harm as a heads up. It goes through kind of scaling emotions, scaling how you're doing on a 1 to 5. Anger, fear, shame, sadness, pain, self-harm, suicide, that's thoughts of suicide, and use. That can typically a substance use. It could also be, alcohol use. So any kind of illicit use, this is once again kind of the old school one. So maybe this doesn't work for you. Maybe this is something that you're not working on. Decreasing this kind of use or don't engage in this use at all. So any sort of illicit substances, which is illegal substances, how many and specify, and I'll go into a sample of this in a second, so it'll make a little bit more sense. Same thing with alcohol, same thing with prescriptions, over the counter. Did you self-harm? Yes or no? Did you lie? Yes or no? How much joy? And then kind of how skillful were you? As you see on the left, and this is pretty common for just about every diary card I think I've ever seen. It's the days of the week are here. I've seen some start with Sundays, and sometimes, once again, people choose to start their week on a different day, but the dates are typically on the left, and then along the top in this version is kind of scaling your emotions. You'll realize this is a 2-page diary card. So skills used, this is the last column, that 1 through 7 is 0, no thoughts about or used. 1 is thoughts about, not used, didn't want to. 2 is thoughts about, not used, want to. And 3 is tried but couldn't use them. And there's more. 4, tried, could use them but didn't help. Tried, could use them, helped. Didn't try, used them, didn't help. Didn't try, used them, help. Once again, this might not be the diary card for you. I will go through more than one, but this is the original diary card that you will often see. And it discusses also how things were your urge to use, your urge to quit therapy, and your urge to harm before and after. The urge to quit therapy one is in DBT. I know this is kind of a lingo thing, and there's a lot of lingo in DBT, but from the provider side of things, as a DBT therapist, there's a lot of discussion about people starting DBT, more often than not, and for understandable reasons, so no judgment there. Quit DBT, they find it very difficult. It is hard to kind of change some thinking habits. It's hard to like look at things that maybe you didn't realize were unhealthy and now we're coming to realize. There's the dynamic of a group, which doesn't suit everybody as well. So the urge to quit therapy is something that typically is brought up in one-on-one sessions, if not every session, almost every session with your DBT therapist if you're doing formal group. And there's a lot of discussion over what is called treatment interfering behaviors. I won't go into them. As you go through DBT, you'll learn about like willfulness is one, but things that get in the way, such as like, are you purposely leaving your book at home? Are you not getting gas until you're on your way to the clinic, thus always late a little bit? And if there's sort of some sabotaging and other things going on that are leading you down the path of quitting treatment. So as a heads up, that is why that is there. It does kind of stand out to a lot of people, and it's a before and after using skills. So that is page 1, and I'll go to a filled out one in a second to kind of sync this a little bit more. And then these are skills. These are all the classic DBT skills back from 1999. In my courses, there are also innovative skills, which I won't get into and you won't see on these diary cards. If you're welcome to add them to diary cards if that is something that you'd like to do. So this is just circling which ones you've used. So as an example, today is Tuesday, August 11th. I utilized Wise Mind. This is me doing a diary card. I utilized Wise Mind, so I would circle or exit out. I probably use Wise Mind almost every day, I would say. But it's the end of my day on Tuesday. It's almost 8 o'clock, getting ready for bed, and I would circle this. I would circle this, which is observing. Just urge surfing is what observing and not acting on is called. So I would circle that one, and so on and so on. Looking at this list, probably quite a bit. For myself, not many. These are interpersonal effectiveness skills because I only had one meeting today and didn't really interact with that many people. So you will also see things that are not technically skills. So there is some building structure and work, building structure, love, building structure, time, building structure, place. As we move through, and I'll show you what a fillable PDF card looks like as well. I have worked with people who have kind of gone in and changed that last piece to involve things such as sleeping an adequate number per night, giving love to a partner or loved ones, tending to relationships listed as one, and other things that you might be working on. Maybe you're working on drinking 32 ounces of water a day and you want to put that on there. That is a-okay. These are kind of very adaptable. Once again, this is the original version of this, and as you see, once again, that urge to quit therapy is on the bottom and urge to use is on the bottom as well. Typically, and you'll see it on this, although it's not outlined, it also goes through the modules. So it will start with the top few are mindfulness, distress tolerance, emotion regulation, and then interpersonal effectiveness are these lovely acronyms here. So this is what the traditional diary cards look like. On this website, you can download them. You can also find this, including fillable options identical to this elsewhere. So going back to the DBT self-help page, there is an example of how somebody used it. Before I click on it, I just want to point out and kind of give a content warning for people because I do talk about self-harm, suicidality, and pieces on addiction. It will be written out, including details of the substance use on the card I'm about to click on. I will timestamp this. If you are like, this diary card sounds terrible, this is not what I want, there's other examples coming up. So feel free to forward to where you need to be, but I will be clicking on the sample, but wanted to give that information. Also, if you are in my live DBT groups, just so you know, although people do share their diary cards, we do request that people do not get into details about things such as trauma, addiction, self-harm. So if that is something that you are working on and you're working on quitting some use or using less, or doing something else that might fall into those categories. When it comes time, if you feel comfortable, you're always asked, never forced, to share your diary card. You might kind of talk about urges you had to do something. You might discuss how you are trying not to do something, but there will not be sort of a deep-rooted or specific conversation about what you are drinking, how much you're drinking or using, or that kind of thing in the live sessions, for the same reason that I gave you this warning, is that, a lot of people are dealing with different things and it can be very uncomfortable to hear this being discussed. We're all kind of sitting in DBT in a pretty vulnerable space. So it's important to build trust and keep it safe. So after all that, we're going to move into the sample. This is the sample that was created on the website. And it goes through just what we discussed. So this is the page 2. This person circled the skills that they utilized. They also were able to write in, half smile is a skill you'll learn. They filled in the urge to use, and they kind of went through day by day. So as a DBT therapist looking at this, it looks like there wasn't many interpersonal effectiveness skills used. This person really utilized the self-soothe, which is awesome, and used self-soothe 7 days in a row. I used to joke around that diary cards sometimes felt like bingo cards because of the way they're set up. So this person got a full bingo across on the self-soothe piece. They were able to radically accept and use half smile twice. They built positive experiences on Wednesday, and they were able to distract on Saturday. It also looks like, once again, this is a therapist point of view on looking at this diary card, not knowing the details, of course, is that this person was very skillful on Saturday, which in a group or even a one-on-one session might lead me to ask kind of what was going on. Was there something distressing that the skills were needed, or was this a day that somebody was able to maybe not be working because they work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and able to be skillful, able to focus on, radically accepting and self-soothe and distracting. So this is page 1. Page 2 is going through what we talked about. So this person is not using substances, alcohol, or prescriptions, but they are feeling pretty sad, having urges to self-harm, and it looks like had a difficult weekend potentially of having some thoughts of hurting themselves. So as you will see, this is listed here. As you see, they also filled in some 3s and 4s. 3s and 4s are 3 tried but couldn't use them, and 4 is try, could do them, but they didn't help me. So once again, from a therapist's point of view, this looks like somebody is struggling quite a bit, and potentially the end of the week might be a little bit more difficult than the beginning of the week. I also see some gaps where they're not filling it in, and in a live group might kind of ask, once again, purely out of curiosity, not any judgmental place, kind of, was anger really high, or was this just, Wednesday, Thursdays, and Tuesdays are really busy at work and I just don't get around to getting all in. So as you see, they marked kind of their urge to use, their urge to quit therapy. Notice the 5 there. Not that uncommon for someone starting out, and the urge to harm before and after. So this is a standard diary card, a sample of kind of, once again, the original, labeled here, 1999 diary card. So moving on to other diary cards, I'll explain how to fill out a few more. So that was sample 1. We are moving to sample 2. So as I'm going to zoom in a little bit because even my eyes with glasses struggle, and the website is undergoing a remodel to make a lot of this a lot more clear and more easily downloadable. So this is a diary card. I'd say this is a diary card that you'll see more often than not. This is the kind of diary card that I typically suggest because it's easy and simple, and I've come to realize that the easier you make something, the more likely you are to do it. I'll speak for myself included here. If something is a lot of steps or has 1 to 5 scaling and 8 million boxes and a front and a back, and anyway, you saw the other diary card. It's great for some people, but something like that, I think, for a lot of people is hard to fill out because it's too much. It's too many steps. So this is definitely a scaled down, simpler one. There is no scaling, as you can see. There is no 1 to 5s. There is no detailed discussion on self-harm or illicit use or anything. So if you're either not struggling with that, or if that's something you're just not working on right now and there's other things you're working on, one thing at a time for sure. Trying to take on everything at once is very difficult, and I will be honest in saying I find that people are less successful when they're trying to kind of bulldoze through all the issues that may be going on in their life at once. So starting small, if that's something you're not dealing with, this is a diary card that I would suggest probably to start for most students. As I mentioned before, it does go through mindfulness and moves to distress tolerance and emotion regulation, and then interpersonal effectiveness. It also only lists really, this copy, and I've seen similar ones too, lists just the basic skills. The classic skills are listed here, as you see. And if you're looking at this and thinking, I don't know any of these skills, you will. We're working towards goals. And for those of you that just started yesterday with the live DBT mindfulness, you do at least know one skill, even if you haven't gotten ahead to learning others. So you will see at the bottom of this one, there's certain things. There's that building structure again, and there's also things such as take nothing personally, always do your best, don't make assumptions, be impeccable with your words. This is something that somebody else had created as well, and they did add sort of that top piece that you saw from the last one and that 1 to 7, that original here. If it's hard to read, that says jealousy, and I believe that is agitation over there. So once again, there are urges, emotions, and actions. It's up to you to decide kind of if you're going to fill that out. I think for most students, they kind of want to keep it simple and start there. You can obviously always change and adapt kind of how you felt. The diary cards, same as the other one, you just circle. I've met people who colored it in or X'd it out or made it look pretty. Do what you need to fill out the diary card, but typically it's just circling. And once again, there is a download button. There are other options that look very much similar to this as well. And in the post, if you are in my live courses on the Mighty Network, you will also see samples. Some of these are the samples, and tonight, after uploading this and editing this, I will also add even more samples for students to utilize as well. I have plenty to share. Moving on to the third sample. This is a kind of open format. I don't see many of these, I'll be honest, very often, but this is an alternative to you. Once again, it's kind of about what works for you and how you kind of feel about it. So it kind of works. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like a bullet journal, if you're familiar with what those are. They seem kind of cool and trendy, and the idea is to kind of make it work for you and make it your own. So you'll notice that there's the date, there is the skill unit, that would be the module that you're in. To do notes, sometimes people do, take notes in DBT. I noticed a few people were taking notes last night, and you're welcome to. But the good thing about this one is, although you see the behaviors, and that's suicide ideation, thoughts of suicide, self-harm, alcohol, illicit drugs, meds, money, food, impulse. There also notice that there's a place to write what you eat in this one. There's a place to put down the medication that you're taking, as well as the side effects, health concerns, exercise, social. Once again, if that is something that you're interested in working on, this might be for you. What I do like about this diary card, not that I don't like it, I think it's a little complex at times, is it goes through the skills. So these are the core mindfulness skills, emotion regulation skills. So it lists every single skill, which I think is really good, including the acronyms. This, as an example, is IMPROVE, in case it's kind of hard to see. And for some people, it's good to have the skills on their page because they're able to kind of remember them quicker, as opposed to maybe, looking at an abbreviation or being like improve and being like what the I was, and then, having to look it up or spending more time or saying, I'm in a rush and I can't do this right now. So this is another option. Also has cognitive distortions, which you'll see. I know it's kind of a little blurry, but it's all or nothing thinking as an example. Jumping to conclusions is another example. labeling, should statements, should do this, should do that, I should be here in my life. So that also might be something useful to you. And as you see, if you were to print it out, there's a big space. So for some people, they like to kind of practice. I've also noticed that if you are the kind of DBT student who is going to look back on the week, you're just going to print it out, or you're going to want to spend a little bit of time. I think it's a good idea. Don't get me wrong, but you're the kind of person that's going to want to spend a little bit of time, every Friday night going through your diary cards, or maybe once a month, you want to kind of look at things as a whole. I do find that taking notes is useful. Because when you look back on this, if you see that Tuesdays you're using the skill improve, a week from now you might not remember why or what goes on Tuesday, as if you're using specifically like interpersonal effectiveness skills like Dear Man. You might be like, use Dear Man Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and kind of forget about the fact that that was the day that you had an argument with a partner, or that is the day that you had that meeting with your boss that was really difficult, but you were able to stand up for yourself and hold your own. That might have been the day that you were really struggling. I've had people write in things like, it's raining, and that totally changed my mood, or plans got canceled. I was really looking forward to this event and it got canceled. So I'm not going to remember next week what that is. And they'll put down in their diary card kind of either little notes on the sidelines, or use something like this just to notate, why they use the skill. It doesn't need to be super detail oriented or anything if you're not comfortable with that. But I have worked with people that found it really good and help them see patterns. Part of this too is about being like, oh, I use interpersonal effectiveness skills every Tuesday because I have a meeting at work every Tuesday. So I'm using interpersonal effectiveness skills because I'm engaging with other people. I might be charting notes on Monday. I might be working in IT or accounting or something where maybe I don't really deal with that many people. So Monday, I've used no interpersonal effectiveness skills, but I also don't really come in contact to anybody to need them. So just kind of a suggestion, actually, if you are liking, this bullet journal open format style. So that is number 3. Number 4 is very similar to number 2, in that it lists the skills and it lists the days, and it's a nice kind of easy circle situation. It also fully writes out the name of the skills. You are likely to come across ones that just say Dear Man, which is fine, but for a lot of people, they might not remember exactly what that is or what module that was. So I do kind of like this in some ways. It's kind of like a cheat sheet. And you'll see kind of similar pattern as you saw in the other ones. This was from the same person who added to this DBT self-help website, who is a peer. So a lot of the similarities are due to what that person wanted to put on the website and what they were going through, and they're open about as well. So they also include sounds of downward spiraling on theirs. I honestly haven't seen this much. If this is a surprise to you, I actually taught DBT in a women's prison, and we use the signs of downward spiraling quite a bit, because people who may have not been in touch with their feelings and had a lot of trauma were kind of going from like 1 to 10 really quickly. Like they would, as an example, not realize that like they'd get in trouble for screaming at somebody, or they would do something in their life that was illegal and violent at times, or use substances, and they would engage in this behavior and like they didn't know why. Like they would go from 1 to 10 and they would just be like hanging out at home, and then the next thing they knew they were getting arrested. And that might seem silly to some, but for some people it's really hard to kind of look at the steps, and we found that using downward spiral really helpful. So they were able to see like, okay, I haven't slept in like 2 days, and typically the less I sleep, the more likely I am to be impulsive or hang out with certain people or engage in certain activity. I'm having some flashbacks, and for me, looking back on it, that's a warning sign of when things went awry. And we found like physical pain specifically was one that came up a lot. So maybe this doesn't, ring true for you, but I have used this section before, just kind of wanted to pull it out. And then this one also has common triggers, which are another thing that I also used in that setting. So going from this pretty basic diary card as a whole with some good explanations, I feel like easy to use. It also goes through things that maybe you don't initially think of, such as halt, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. It's pretty common in 12 step as well, but there's urges, there's emotions. Once again, this is also a 0 to 5, and this, has the skills on page 1 like the others, and kind of dives into some more kind of depth on label 2. The other thing I also want to point out, and it goes through the skills at the bottom, and once again, I kind of like a little cheat sheet, I must admit, on the side for a lot of people, really, really, really helpful. That kind of in filling out diary cards, it's, if you are working with a private practice therapist or doing similar work, whatever that might look like for you, even if the therapist or person you're working with is not experienced in DBT, I do find that bringing this to sessions has been helpful for people. So even if your therapist might be like, what's improves? Like, what are you talking about a little bit? Twofold. One, it holds yourself accountable to start using skills. And the second fold that other students have brought up that I don't think I initially realized was if you bring this into your therapy appointment and you're saying like, I use Dear Man Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it gives you a moment to explain what Dear Man is to somebody who doesn't, which, not that your job is to educate a therapist, but at the same time, by you explaining it, it does kind of solidify you knowing what it is. So I think explaining a skill, like it's called talkback, is really beneficial. It's a therapy skill as well. So hopefully the person you're working with is open to it. But I do have found that many students have been like, my therapist does not know DBT at all, which is why I'm in your courses, but I am still, seeing a therapist, and I bring my diary card in because I go over, accountability of like, I check these days, I use the skill, and also give. I just explained to my therapist what give is, and it made me think at this situation, this relationship, today, etc., etc. And I have found that kind of teach back really beneficial for students as well. So I think that was number 4. I will go to 5, and then I will show you the fillable one because they're probably looking very, very similar, and you'll notice pretty patterns in all of them as well. This also has that kind of diary card, that diary format, that journal format. It also has that 1 to 7 about using skills, which I find early on can be really useful specifically. If you were unaware, I don't know if you noticed it on the other ones, I apologize if I didn't explain it more, target behavior. So the term target behavior in DBT is if you are in a DBT group, you don't discuss in detail what your target behavior is, but identify privately what your target behavior is. So as an example, and I'm going to kind of choose, shall we say, light examples for everyone's sake. If your target behavior is that you are not a very good sleeper and you'd like to focus more on getting 8 hours of sleep a night, a target behavior might be staying up till 3 o'clock and watching Netflix when you need to be up at 7 a.m. A target behavior is something that you're kind of working on. So if that is your target behavior, is to work on not staying up really, really late at night when you need to be up early the next morning because you're focused on sleep. You might go into your DBT sessions, the groups, not the one-on-ones, and kind of talk about how you are working on your target behavior, how you're able to plan ahead, to not engage in your target behavior, but you are not essentially allowed to kind of talk about that your target behavior is 3 a.m. Netflix binges. Obviously, that's a really light example, and some people's target behaviors are things that are upsetting or self-harm, and other things that might trigger or make other people feel uncomfortable. So the idea is also to be careful in kind of how you say things. It might not be upsetting to you, but to other people in the room, trust me, as someone who's done this and people have slipped up, it's kind of natural in some ways just to talk about things freely. You're in a somewhat of a therapy setting, you feel comfortable and safe, but it is important to be careful kind of how you talk about your target behavior. So that is your target behavior. It is what you are working on. So you will see, once again, same list we've seen a few times. I don't think I pointed this out, but joy is on this list. So if you're like, oh, this is making me feel even worse, and I'm just pointing out my sadness and my anger and my pain and my shame and my urges and all these terrible, terrible things, which is a judgment, DBT. But if that's kind of where you're at, it is nice to see that joy is listed. Also, once again, if you want to change this up and, take out something, maybe you don't really deal with pain, but you want to change that to something else, you can. And this is a really open format. Once again, if you want to put in plans were canceled to have lunch with a friend, really kind of bummed out by it. Tuesday's my meeting day where I have to run a meeting with 15 people. So interpersonal effectiveness skills are probably more likely to be used on a Tuesday than on a Monday. Feel free to kind of use it if you're looking back. And then this is that cheat sheet that I, once again, really like it. This one goes into more in depth and it explains the acronyms. This is IMPROVE as an example. It explains the acronyms really well. So that is kind of the last sample I will go through other than the fillable one. There is also a pocket diary card. I won't go through this, but the idea is that it folds up and put it in your pocket. So if that's something that is interesting to you, and it does get into the acronyms as well as discuss the cognitive distortion thinking. So that is everything from the DBT self-help website. I am going to show you the fillable PDF diary card. You might find others online. Feel free to let me know if you do. I find it really interesting to see kind of how other people are working. So this is from pdffiller.com. I Googled, it's the first thing to come up. I've downloaded this. I believe it's free. Let me know if you find out anything else. And it's good because you can write in other things you want to write in. As you see, it's pretty similar to the first one. It's a 2-pager. There's the second page. So this could be very useful to you, but you can also go in and edit things. You might not want to edit the skills directly, but you might want to start your week differently. You might be kind of not dealing with some of these things. Maybe this is set up for 4 target behaviors. Maybe right now you're just focused on a good night's sleep and that is your target right now, and maybe you've dealt with other things already, or maybe over time you're going to, dive a little bit deeper. You can kind of remove things, change things, type things in. I have found very, very, very many people have used this format as well. I think this website you can also make your own if you're kind of really crafty about things. I have yet to kind of go in and do that myself, but you can go in and start your week on a different day or set it up how you feel most comfortable. So that is a fillable PDF diary card. I will add these and some other options to that thread if you are on my DBT live course page, which is on the Mighty Network. So you can add your own as well. Once again, I really like to see what people come up with. Some people are so creative and have really great ideas. Also, once again, if you want to create your own, or you're like, feel overwhelmed or whatnot with how this kind of is all set up, Excel is another really great, easy space. Especially if you don't have a printer or anything, it's easier for you to just, go in and highlight or circle or however, once again, you want to do that. So this is from dbtselfhelp.com, and it is all about diary cards. I hope this was helpful. As always, feel free to ask questions on this video, on the thread, and add diary cards. Always here to help. I'm just glad that I was able to have some quiet. Hopefully you don't hear too many dogs barking in the background. Those are my own, about kind of diary cards and how to set it up. So if you have any other ideas of videos that I can make that would be beneficial as you move through doing DBT online, feel free to let me know. As always, message me or ask on the main community page with any questions, and I hope to see you in class.